All right, everybody. It's been a lovely weekend. It's time to get back to Number the Stars. We're getting close to the end of the book. It's not a whole lot longer to go. We're going to find out if Ellen and the Rosens get to safety, or if the Nazis end up catching them. Don't know. And we're getting to the age where, sometimes books turn out good and sometimes they don't. So, remember last week, they're trying to sneak the Rosens to Uncle Henrik's boat. And then in the boat, they'll go to Sweden. Because if they can get to Sweden, they'll be safe. So they got them to the boat. However, there's a package that's very, very, very important. We don't know what's in it, but we know it's very, very important. And Mr. Rosen dropped it. And so Anna Marie has to run it to the boat because Mom has broken her ankle. So all kinds of things happening. And we also know that right when we left off, Anna Marie's almost to the boat, but she gets stopped by soldiers with 2 dogs. So, we're going to see if she can get through this, get by this. I don't know. All right, chapter 15. My dogs smell meat. Anna Marie's mind raced. She remembered what her mother had said. If anyone stops you, you must pretend to be nothing more than a silly little girl. She stared at the soldiers. She remembered how she had stared at the others, frightened, when she had stopped her on the street. Kirsty hadn't been frightened. Kirsty had been... well, nothing more than a silly little girl, angered because the soldiers had touched her hair that afternoon. She had known nothing of danger, and the soldier had been amused by her. Anna Marie willed herself with all her being to behave as Kirsty would. "Good morning," she said carefully to the soldiers. They looked at her up and down in silence. Both dogs were tense and alert. The 2 soldiers who held the leashes wore thick gloves. "What are you doing here?" one of them asked. Anna Marie held out her basket, with a thick loaf of bread visible. "My Uncle Henrik forgot his lunch, and I'm taking it to him. He's a fisherman." The soldiers were looking around. Their eyes glanced behind her and scanned the bushes on either side. "Are you alone?" one asked. Anna Marie nodded. "Yes," she said. One of the dogs growled, but she noticed that both dogs were looking at the lunch basket. One soldier stepped forward. The other, and the 2 holding the dogs, remained where they were. "You came out before daybreak, just to bring a lunch? Why doesn't your uncle eat fish?" What would Kirsty reply? Anna Marie tried to giggle the way her sister might. "Uncle Henrik doesn't even like fish," she said, laughing. He says he sees way too much of it and smells too much of it. Anyway, he wouldn't eat it raw." And she made a face. "Well, I suppose he would if he were starving, but Uncle Henrik always has bread and cheese for lunch." "Keep chattering," she told herself, as Kirsty would. A silly little girl. "I like fish," she went on. "I like it the way my mother cooks it. Sometimes she rolls it in breadcrumbs and..." The soldier reached forward and grabbed the crisp loaf of bread from the basket. He examined it carefully. Then he broke it in half, pulling the 2 halves apart with his fist. That would enrage Kirsty, she knew. "Don't!" she said angrily. "That's Uncle Henrik's bread. My mother baked it." The soldier ignored her. He tossed the 2 halves of the loaf to the ground, 1/2 in front of each of the dogs. They consumed it, each snapping at the bread and gulping it so that it was gone in an instant. "Have you seen anyone in the woods?" The soldier barked a question at her. "No, only you." Anna Marie stared at him. "What are you doing in the woods anyway? You're making me late. Uncle Henrik's boat will leave before I get there with his lunch, or what's left of his lunch." The soldier picked up the wedge of cheese. Now, Anna Marie is acting like she's not scared and acting like she's just asking questions and getting angry at them. Is that how she really feels on the inside? No, she is completely frightened. She knows the danger here. She is aware of that. But if she acts that way, they will think she's guilty. And they'll think she knows something and things will be rougher for her. So she has to act innocent and, kind of almost argue with them and act like she's a child. So remember, that's how she's acting. That's not how she's feeling. The soldier picked up the wedge of cheese. He turned it over in his hand. He turned to the 3 behind him and asked them something in his own language. One of them answered, 9, in a bored tone. Anna Marie recognized the word. The man had replied, no. He had probably been asked, Anna Marie thought, "Do you want this? Or perhaps, should I give this to the dogs?" The soldier continued to hold the cheese. He tossed it back and forth between his hands. Anna Marie gave an exasperated sigh. Can I go now, please? She asked impatiently. The soldier reached for the apple. He noted its brown spots and made a face of disgust. No meat? He asked, glanced at the basket and the napkin that lay in the bottom. Anna Marie gave a withering look. You know we have no meat, she said instantly. Your army eats all of Denmark's meat. Please, please, she implored in her mind, don't lift the napkin. The soldier laughed. He dropped the bruised apple on the ground, and one of the dogs leaned forward, pulling at his leash, sniffed at the apple, and stepped back. But both dogs still looked intently at the basket, their ears alert, their mouths open. Saliva glistened on the smooth pink gums. My dogs smell meat, the soldier said. They smell squirrels in the woods, Anna Marie responded. You should take them hunting. The soldier reached forward with the cheese in his one hand, as if he was going to return it to the basket. But he didn't. Instead, he pulled out the basket. Instead, he pulled out the flowered cotton napkin. Anna Marie froze. Your uncle has a pretty little lunch, the soldier said scornfully, crumpling the napkin around the cheese in his hands. Like a woman, he added with contempt. And then his eyes locked on the basket. He handed the cheese and the napkin to the soldier beside him. What's that? There, in the bottom, he asked with a deferent, tenser voice. What would Kirsty do? Anna Marie stamped her foot. Suddenly, to her own surprise, she began to cry. I don't know, she said, her voice choked. My mother's going to be angry that you stopped me and made me late, and you've completely ruined Uncle Henrik's lunch, and so he'll be mad at me too. The dogs whined and struggled against the leashes, nosing forward into the basket. One of the other soldiers muttered something in German. The soldier took out the packet. Why is this so carefully hidden? He snapped. Anna Marie wiped her eyes on the sleeve with a sweater. It wasn't hidden any more than the napkin was. I don't know what it is. That, she realized, was true. She had no idea what was in the packet. The soldier tore the paper open, while below him on the ground the dogs strained and snarled, pulling against their leashes. Their muscles were visible beneath the sleek, short-haired flesh. He looked inside and then glanced at Anna Marie. Stop crying, you idiot girl, he said harshly. Your stupid mother has sent your uncle a handkerchief. In Germany, the women have better things to do. They don't stay home hemming handkerchiefs for their men. He gestured with the folded white cloth and gave a short, caustic laugh. At least she didn't stitch flowers on it. He flung it to the ground, still half wrapped in the paper beside the apple. The dogs lunged and sniffed at it eagerly, then subsided, disappointed again. Go on, the soldier said. He dropped the cheese and napkin back into the basket. Go on to your uncle and tell him the German dogs enjoyed his bread. All of the soldiers pushed past her. One of them laughed, and they spoke to each other in their own language. In a moment, they have disappeared down the path in the direction from which Anna Marie had just come. Quickly, she picked up the apple and opened the packet with the white handkerchief inside. She put them into the basket and ran around the bend toward the harbor, where the morning sky was now bright with the early sun, and some of the boat engines were starting with their strident din. The ingboard was still there, by the dock, and Uncle Henrik was there, his light hair wind-blown and bright as he knelt by the nets. Anna Marie called to him, and he came to the side, his face worried when he recognized her on the dock. She handed the basket across. Mama sent your lunch, she said, her voice quavering, but soldiers stopped me, and they took your bread. She didn't dare to tell him any more. Henrik glanced quickly around into the basket. She could see the look of relief on his face and knew that it was because he saw the packet was there, even though it was torn open. Thank you, he said, and the relief was evident in his voice. Anna Marie looked quickly around the familiar small boat. She could see down the passageway into the empty cabin. There was no sign of the Rosens or the others. Uncle Henrik followed her eyes and her puzzled look. All is well, he said softly. Don't worry. Everything is all right. I wasn't sure, he said, but now, he eyed the basket in his hands. Because of you, Anna Marie, everything is all right. You run home now and tell your mama not to worry. I will see you this evening. He grinned at her suddenly. They took my bread, eh? He said. I hope they choke on it. Now, I want you to think for a second. You should be a little confused at this point. I'm a little confused. Everybody is so very, very excited to figure out why in the world, or to get this handkerchief to them. It's a handkerchief. Why in the world would that save the day? Why would the handkerchief be so important to risk Anna Marie's life, Mama's life? Why is that handkerchief so important? And we know if the author wants us to think about things, wants us to be confused, we know that it's going to be something important. So you're confused, I'm confused, and that's fine because we know that there's going to be something come up about this later on. So we'll have to find out later this week, hopefully, what in the world that handkerchief was all about. Until tomorrow, have a great day.